This is the welfare queen, and this is where the term the welfare queen originated from. It actually originated back in 1970 when Ronald Reagan villainized a Chicago woman for bilking the government. And her other sins were possible kidnappings, murder, and far worse. So I read the article to its entirety. So it said this woman had 80 names, alias names, and 30 addresses and 15 telephone numbers to collect food stamps, Social Security, veterans benefits for 4 non-existent deceased veteran husbands, as well as welfare. And she had tax-free cash income alone that had been running from $150,000 a year. And so it also goes on to read too, be mindful that even though Reagan used this as a slogan, the welfare queen, it said her name was Linda Taylor, and it was the Chicago Tribune, not the GOP politician, who dubbed her as the welfare queen. It was the Tribune that lavished attention on Taylor's jewelry, furs, and the Cadillac, all of which were real. Also, it says that she was using a lot of alias names. So I read the whole article about this woman. Here you can see where it says she had 80 names, 30 addresses, 12 Social Security cards. She was collecting veterans benefits. So if you look at this woman, she was supposedly a master of disguise. She had several wigs and outfits and makeup to change her appearance and the way her mannerisms, the way she behaved. And in the beginning, people assumed that she was black, that she was a fair-skinned, complexioned black woman, like a mulatto. And it was said on her death certificate that she was in fact white, or at least that's what it had on her death certificate. And I believe in the article it talks about her identities and how people noticed that she had a knack for changing her wigs and her hair. Her facial, would look one way and then it would change. She had several different husbands, and she was definitely into welfare fraud. But they said she also had some issues where she was possibly involved in kidnapping babies and selling the babies, and also using the babies so that she could collect welfare. And it was sort of like a way to say that she needed the aid. And there was a story also in there that talked about a little boy that she possibly may have been involved in kidnapping, and that this child was never found, and that there were many babies that she would have babies, show up with a baby, and then the next thing you know, that baby would disappear. So she would leave babies in different places. And she also had a knack, this woman Linda Taylor, for using all these different names. So there are people that do this, but the thing is that they always coin the people that really need public assistance the most as being lazy, as being frauds. Ronald Reagan, already, he had this picture in his campaign that welfare recipients are lazy, they don't want to work, they just want to bilk the system. And so you do have some people who do take advantage of the system. So this was Linda Taylor in her later years before she passed. And so there's been a lot of issues back and forth about welfare fraud. This is what is hurtful. is when you have people who really do need assistance, government assistance. And when they want to get it, they are already treated as if they're going to lie or they're going to cheat the system. And so this is why you get some dissent from people who say stop the war on the poor. That welfare is a right for people who need it. And so ever since this issue with this woman here, Linda Taylor, came about, and the whole thing seemed like it was coined around blacks being lazy and women. So it was the gender thing and also women, and they had to be black. And so there was this picture in the minds of people who were already probably, here you're talking about the 70s, Ronald Reagan villainizing a Chicago woman, and this is the south side of Chicago, mind you. And so automatically they had it in their mind, this is some lazy black woman that is just stifling the system, and she's just taking whatever she can get. She's, living high on the hog. And so that doesn't sit well with people, of course, especially if they already have it in their mind that they have this hate, this deep-seated hate towards a particular social group or ethnic group. So benefit fraud is real. But you do have other people who have problems. We have the opioid problem. Just like there was a crack epidemic in the 80s, even before the 80s, there were heroin epidemics like in the 70s, where you had a lot of black people that, had problems with drugs. And then in the 80s, you had the crack cocaine. And now here we are. We still have drugs, but you always hear it's black people's problem. But now opioid, Xanax, Oxycontin, more white people are addicted to drugs. So some people's argument is if you can afford drugs and cigarettes and beer, manicures, tattoos, then you don't need food stamps or welfare. So a lot of people will argue those issues all the way down, and they say if you can afford all these other things, then you don't need welfare. But well, some may have a point. But here's the example here. You got a liquor store. You have cigarettes and beer. And it says we accept food stamps. Okay, so some people, if they can't find a job and if they don't have a lot of skills or the jobs don't pay them very well, then there may be other things that are going on where they're not able to do all of the things that they would want to do. So they may feel depressed. And so when you don't make enough money or a living wage, you may feel like, wow, what am I going to do? And so if a person really has to go through that, knowing that they don't have enough money to feed their family and they're always tight of money, it could cause people to have psychological problems where they may end up doing things like drinking or smoking, or they may, depending on how difficult the problems are, they may end up doing drugs. It just doesn't happen just in the black communities. It happens in white communities. It happens with poor people, and it also can happen with people who have money. So a lot of times people will villainize women. They want you to have babies. They don't want you to have abortions. But if you have a baby and you can't start working, then automatically they call you lazy. They call you a moocher. It's just the same as is when you have a natural disaster or some disaster happens, and then you have black people looking for food. But if it's white people, they're looking for food. But if it's black people, they're looting. And so some people see things in a whole nother lens. And it can have a lot to do with culture beliefs and the way people view other cultures because they happen to be from a different culture. They're not black, or are they from another place, or maybe they're hateful towards blacks. And so automatically, if a black person is in distress, they automatically assume, oh, this is bad black person is coming after me. So you can have white people who are poor, obese, have a lot of babies, living off the welfare, and they could be like the welfare queen, making up names, taking money from the government. But if they change the face of the individual and make them black, you could have the same problem as the white woman previous. Poor, not really having a lot of money, maybe not having a lot of education, not a lot of support from family or from fathers of the babies. White woman can have a lot of babies. They look at it as like, oh, it's so sad. We need to help her. But if it's someone white that's on the welfare and they sit at home and they don't want to work and they don't want to, go out and try, it's looked at another way. It may be people may criticize the fact that this woman, she won't get up off her bottom and go out there and be active at looking for school and work. But when it's a black person that is sitting at home and that's smoking and that's drinking and that's not looking for work and that's not doing anything productive, it's looked at in a whole nother lens, in a whole nother way. And it's usually women who are villainized, even if the woman isn't black. If it's a woman, you notice that? You never hear about the men that sit at home and don't work and that take welfare money and don't want to look for jobs. It's always about women. And they even put people's children in this. Home to the richest poor people in the world. They look at it as, you guys don't need any help. This is America. This is a rich country. So you have people, they villainize and demonize black females with kids. And if you're on Section 8, or if you're sitting at home because you can't find a job, or either if it's not because you necessarily can't find a job right away, maybe you have to be at home with the kids until you can find decent child care because you don't want to leave your kids with anyone, you're demonized. There's a lot of scrutiny behind it. But if it's guys, they're dressed nice, they could be doing the exact same thing. They may not be taking care or raising any kids. They may be making women pregnant. They're drinking, they have nice clothes, but they're not working a job. They're not looking for a job. They're not going to school. They're not wanting to do anything. They're living off their girlfriend's welfare money. But nobody says anything about that. So here's a pyramid of capitalist systems. So you have people at the top who have a lot of money. And all the way to the bottom are the ones that are the working class. In between, you have the other people there. So that's historical. So they say there's hierarchy everywhere you go. So what about wealthy people? Do you think they take advantage of the government? Are they eating steak and driving Cadillacs? Corporate welfare recipients? What about wealthy people who take advantage of the systems that go on here in America? They look good, they smell good, they have maybe good education, and they know how to know their way around where the money is and how to get money and how to manipulate. Meet the Waltons. Walmart made them the richest family in America. Then they back ALEC, which opposes increasing the minimum wage. So you got people who they're quick to blame their welfare recipients. They're lazy. And they work really hard, but they only make minimum wage. That's all they make. It's not a livable wage. So people attack the poor. They attack women. They attack black women while you are busy blaming people for welfare. Look at the money that Walmart has made. And they encourage their workers to get on welfare just so that they don't have to pay them benefits, and they won't give them full-time work, is what I've heard. This is what some people think a food stamp budget is, that people that are bilking the system, they're really buying expensive food. Well, some may be bilking the system, but it's not who you would expect it to be. They think it's black people or it's women that are, that are Hispanic or black. What about this white woman? Muslim welfare queen loses benefits, arrested by cops when they saw her Facebook page. Okay. People are very receiving and welcoming to people who are wealthy looking or look like they possess a lot of money. But if you come in looking like you don't have a lot, people judge you. They're critical of you. They already have demonized you and they've put you in a box. And they don't feel like they should make you comfortable. And so that is how welfare people are people that they would say are welfare people, in other words, are people that need welfare, they would coin them to be. More like at the bottom. But what about the guy at the top? He could be doing the same exact thing. Just because he looks good, smells good, wears nice suits, doesn't mean he isn't taking advantage. Okay, we finally found Reagan's welfare queen. His name is Donald Trump. This is a meme, of course. It says, Trump pays no taxes, yet benefits from American laws and subsidies and taxpayers. The biggest welfare queen in America. So this might be an argument of someone, of course. They say that a lot of times welfare stereotypes are racialized. Even to the extent to where you feel like you're profiled by police because of laws that have been put out. So usually it's blacks guilty of being black. So this happened here in Los Angeles. We had the riots and they let all 4 officers go until they had to retry these officers. They had to do a retrial, of course, because of the anger that erupted with the 92 riots. It started at Florence and Normandy. And so initially this is what had took place in 92. The beating of Rodney King, and then there was the eruption of the mega riot. Now, the reason why I put this in here, you would say, well, what does that got to do with welfare? Well, guess what? It has a lot to do with it because of the profiling. Because people who are profiled on welfare are also profiled everywhere you go, even on the street, or what you would think are welfare recipients. Some of these people may not even be on welfare, but because they're black or they're Hispanic or they look like they don't have a lot of money and they don't drive fancy cars, and even if they do drive a fancy car, oh, they must be a gangbanger or they must have stolen it. So it's the same thing. And once again, like I told you, you wouldn't assume a person if they were, let's say, wealthy or an upper class elite, that they would be partaking in the government assistance program or doing something such as pilfering from the government. And so for years and years and years, they had this thing going around about the welfare queen and that she was black, that she was lazy. And they found out that the woman was really white and that she had this history of being deceitful and sly and cunning, and she was milking the system, but she was white and she had all these disguises and different wigs and whatnot, and married different men, and she was trying to get their money if they died, tried to steal from people, do things, get their insurance money. And so you have some black people who do want to work, they do want to have money, but when they get a job, sometimes that money doesn't go a long way, so they may have to get government assistance just to supplement that income. Some people don't get it. They don't understand it. They may live in a whole nother way and they may make 5 figures, 6 figures. Everybody doesn't make that type of income. So In these neighborhoods, in these little small communities, you have churches all over the place. And Hispanic culture usually has a lot of Catholicism. Okay, those are big organizations. People give money to religious organizations. Do you think they help their communities? Or are they doing more harm to the communities? The same goes with the black churches. There's been many scandals with these churches. They come into these communities, there are churches on every corner. It's the same with the Hispanic community. When you come to LA, there's churches on every corner. But is it doing more harm than good? Some may say, oh, it does good. Some may say, oh, it does harm. And with the black culture, you have lots of black women who will attend church. Lots of black males that'll attend church. They'll put their money in the pot. But where's that money going? Is it actually going back to the communities that are suffering, that need assistance? Or you have a bunch of people praying for something that is never going to come, never going to amount to anything in their lives. It's just a hope. So those are just some things to think about. But I'll leave the article about the welfare queen with all those alias names. You can read it for yourself. Thanks for listening.